Assalamu alaikum, dear students of class 11th. Our subject is business studies and our today's topic is functions of commercial banks. Dear students, as you know, banks are the business services. They help the businessman in conducting their day-to-day affairs. Banks may be defined as an institutions which accept money from the public for the purpose of lending or investment. There are different types of banks. We have discussed yesterday: commercial banks, cooperative banks, specialized banks, central bank. Today we are discussing commercial banks, functions of commercial banks. Dear students, commercial banks are the banks which are governed by the Indian Banking Regulations Act 1949. The main function of these banks is to accept deposits from the public with an aim of lending or investment. There are two types of commercial banks: public sector banks and private sector banks. Public sector banks are those commercial banks which has a major stake at the public sector. They emphasize more on social objectives than on profitability. There are about 20 such banks in India. For example, State Bank of India, Canara Bank, Punjab National Bank. They are the commercial public sector banks. Whereas private sector banks, these commercial banks are owned, managed and controlled by private promoters. These banks are free to operate as per market forces. For example, HDFC, ICICI, IDBI, UTI, etc. Their students, commercial banks they perform different types of functions. Number one, accepting deposits. The most important function of commercial banks is to accept the deposits. The basic or primary function of the commercial banks is to accept the deposits from the customers. These deposits are accepted through current account, saving account, or fixed deposits. People or the businessmen having the surplus money deposit it in the banks. Banks provide safe custody to their cash. In addition to this, they also pay interest on it and allow the facilities of transferring it to the others through checks. There are following types of accounts, bank accounts: current account, saving account, or fixed deposit account. In current account, the total amount deposited in the account can be withdrawn fully without any notice. However, in saving account, there are some restrictions on the amount as well as the number of times of withdrawals in a given period. The main aim of such account is to encourage saving habit among the customers. Interest is paid by the banks on these deposits as laid down by RBI. Regarding the fixed deposits, amount is held for a fixed period of time and a higher rate of interest is given as compared to the saving account. The amount can easily be withdrawn before the due date too, with appropriate adjustment on interest amount. Next function of commercial banks is providing loans and advances. Banks provide loans and at higher rate of interest than it allows on deposits. The difference of these two rates of interest is the profit for the bank. Loans are provided in different forms through overdraft, cash credit, discounting trade bills, consumer credits. This is a very important function of the commercial banks. And the businessmen use they get loans and advances from in order to carry on their business. Next function is check facility. Banks provide facility of checks, which is a check is a credit instrument which helps in withdrawing money from the banks. There are two types of checks: bearer checks, crossed checks, or we can say pays account checks. Bearer check is the check which is encashed immediately at the bank counter. The check which is to be deposited only in the pays account is known as crossed check. An important function of these banks is to receive the checks favoring their clients, drawn on other banks, get them encashed through the interbank transactions, and park the funds in respective account of their clients. The next function of commercial banks is remittance of funds. Facility of transferring of funds from one place to another through bank drafts, pay order, mail transfer, or on nominal commission charges. Bank facilitates transfer of funds from one place to another through bank drafts, pay orders, small transfers, mail transfers, or on nominal charges, commission charges. The next function is allied services. Apart from the above mentioned functions, the banks also provide following services: payment of bills, locker facility, underwriting services, buying and selling of securities, payment of insurance premium, collection of dividends, payment of electric bills, water bills, etc. Nowadays, there is online banking. Sitting at home, we can do transactions with the bank. We can use ATMs. So, commercial banks, they have a variety of functions which help the businessman to carry on their business. That's all for today. Goodbye.